Well, hello, and welcome to another Coil Chat. These are going to be where we are going to do longer formats of being able to talk about the issues that I bring to you on my social media, but I only have 90 seconds to do it. So a lot of times we just don't have enough time. And so this is going to give you more of taking the biggest stories that we talk about and breaking it down into more information for you so you can get it all here. Shorter than a podcast, but longer than my 90-second videos that you have. Pull up your cup of coffee or your hot chocolate, tea, whatever you like, and let's talk about it. So the biggest story of the week that we decided to talk about was going to be the ban on TikTok. There's so much information out there, and a lot of people are a little bit confused by it. A lot of people are frustrated by it, and then a lot of people are like, good, ban TikTok. So what we're going to do is let's just kind of go from the beginning so you kind of understand what is going on and why it's looking like TikTok's going to go away on January 19th. At least there's going to be a ban from it being able to basically be used in the future. And let's talk about why. So just so you remember, in 2020, they tried to ban TikTok back then. I didn't even know what TikTok was in 2020. I was like probably you, where in about later 2020 or 2021 is when I downloaded TikTok, and I was like, I'm not using TikTok. But COVID really kind of got that to where you're like, oh, I'm bored. I have nowhere to go. Let's do something else. So like everybody else, I downloaded TikTok, and my social media guy was like, you should get on TikTok. You should do TikTok. And I was like, I'm not going to dance. Like, I'm a lawyer. Like, I'm not going to get up there. Cause at the time, TikTok was heavily like trending dances and very short videos. And one night I was like, I'm going to watch it. And I got hooked. And I was like, man. And now looking back, I'm like, oh man, I should have done TikTok, because the people that started back then are the biggest content creators on the app now. If you started TikTok today, unless you have some kind of like miraculous breakthrough, you becoming like a huge content creator on it is going to be almost impossible. And now, you know, with this looming ban that is coming, I'm sure there are just some content creators that are just absolutely scared to death, because there are some people that are making so much money from TikTok. TikTok pays you for your content. They pay you for videos that are over a minute long, and they pay fairly well compared to the competitor, which would be Instagram or Facebook. And I'll go through all of that and disclose everything I make, because I'm not a huge content creator. And majority of my followers, my biggest platform that I do is Instagram. That's where I have the most followers. But I by far make more money on TikTok, even though I get like a fraction of the views on my videos as I do from Instagram. So I'm sure just some of these content creators are just absolutely beside themselves and really upset. But the TikTok ban was already like, they were already saying they were going to go ban TikTok. And those rumors started in 2020. And their main reason was because TikTok is owned by a Chinese-based company called ByteDance. And their biggest thing is that the app gets all of this information, just like Meta. The entire social media code is to get information about you so that it can push out content that it believes you will like. That can be in content that it thinks you will like and watch. And guess what? Meta has perfected it, because I'll be scrolling through Facebook or whatnot, and all of a sudden I get an ad for something that I thought about or wanted to look at on a completely different app. It's a little spooky how it does it, but that's the way that it works. And they believe, you know, our US government believes that therefore, because they're collecting all this data, that ByteDance, which is in China, allows the Chinese government to basically get all of this information about Americans. And they wanted to do it. Now, President Trump signed an executive order banning TikTok if the app is not sold to an American company within 45 days. That was done in August of 2020. And in September 2020, TikTok files an injunction to prevent the app's impending ban. And the ban was stalled as a result. It wasn't going to go forward. And in December 2020, a federal judge blocks Trump's administration on the TikTok ban. Lawmakers call the proposed ban arbitrary, and the ruling also cites a reasonable alternative before banning TikTok. So TikTok is saved for another day. Now, in June 2021, the Biden administration then takes Trump's TikTok ban attempts and they officially drop it. The new administrative calls for a review of the apps like TikTok for security threats. And their goal was to take more of an evidence-based approach to what they decided to do. So they created a committee, and that's what the committee was going to do. They were going to investigate and try to find evidence that showed that ByteDance, who is a Chinese company, was somehow an actual national security threat to America. Now, in June 2022, TikTok officially transferred its traffic from the US to a US-based company called Oracle. Oracle is huge in America. And Oracle was going to hold all of the US data that was collected by TikTok on servers on US soil. So prior to this, TikTok was gathering the data and they were doing it in Virginia, but they were doing backups in Singapore. They never stored the data on Chinese soil. That was a rumor, but they were doing backups in Singapore. So then on December 8th, 2022, TikTok now is saying that they have fixed any of the security concerns because they are now based and storing all of US data in a US-based company on US servers. And they put up a firewall, they claim, that says they don't even have access to the data, and the data is not going to be able to be accessed by the Chinese government, and they're not going to be able to do that. In December of 2022, Forbes releases a report stating an internal investigation by ByteDance, the parent company of the video sharing TikTok, found that employees tracked multiple journalists covering the company, improperly gaining access to their IP addresses and user data in an attempt to identify whether they had been in the same locale as ByteDance employees. And this kind of threw everybody in a tizzy because obviously they don't want that happening, correct? And it was right after that TikTok is then banned from mobile devices of lawmakers and staff in the US House of Representatives. So the government hasn't been able to do it on a national scale, but they made it so nobody working in government can have it on their phones. Absolutely deleted it. Then a revised ban came out where it restricts TikTok from mobile devices on all federal government employees. So they were like, if you work for the federal government, you can't have TikTok. And they were going to somehow enforce that. I don't know how. I don't know if it was just like on your honor or if they were doing checks. If they paid for your cell phone, maybe they had the right to look. But in the end, I don't know how they would have really been able to enforce that. But obviously, if you got caught with it, you could then get in trouble. So that's how this kind of started going down this way. And then on March 1st, 2023, that's when the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee votes to give President Biden approval to ban TikTok. They had done their internal investigation and they believed that they had enough evidence to prove that there was a national security threat, and they recommended to President Biden that he should ban TikTok. And that was when all of the hearings went down. If you remember, ByteDance, the head of TikTok came and he talked, and it was very argumentative, and you kind of felt like it was kind of a poor showing and a little like ridiculous from our congressmen who were like attacking and just being really rude and disrespectful to the president of ByteDance. But that's the way it went. Interesting enough, did you know that April 14th, 2023, Montana becomes the first state to approve a full statewide ban on TikTok? It's technically didn't go into effect until January 2024 if it was actually enacted. Like, again, how do you enforce that, right? It doesn't really make sense, but that's what Montana was going to do. And March 7th, 2024, after a year of all of this hubbub of wanting to ban TikTok, that's when the U.S. House Committee passes the unprecedented measure to ban TikTok. And they basically said that TikTok needed to sell its American portion of its company to an American company by January 19th, or it would be banned. And that was it. Like, no other condition. Like, you have to sell it, or we are going to ban you from being in America. Obviously, this happened and everybody was like, yeah, right, something's going to happen. Like, this is unconstitutional. There was a lot of talk about that. Like, and clearly content creators on TikTok who make a lot of money were like, this is trying to ban free speech. And there was a lot of like both sides to it. Like, hey, TikTok should be banned. It's a national security threat, to, hey, it shouldn't. Because, there are hundreds and thousands of people that make money off of TikTok. Like they've created it. It's kind of like what Etsy did, but gave you a platform to be able to reach more people. So, you can have your TikTok store, which is like an Etsy store, and then you actually have a platform to post videos and get people to come and traffic. And there are people making a lot of money off of this newer platform that did shorter content because YouTube, was wanting longer content. And then Instagram is 90 seconds, like super short. And so people were really enjoying what TikTok kind of brought. And then obviously we see that Meta is trying to kind of change their ways to be a little bit more like TikTok, but nobody knows how TikTok does what they do. Why is their algorithm so good? And one of the issues is if they were to sell part of their company to a US company, they're not going to share their algorithm that has made it so successful. So basically, it would be like Coca-Cola selling their, European company, portion to a European company, but not giving them the recipe to Coke. Sounds a little silly, but that's kind of how this goes. And so I think that's why ByteDance is like putting their feet down. We're not selling because they are not going to give their, trademark secret propriety. I mean, it's just like, you think Mark Zuckerberg would just roll over and give what he's done for Meta? Absolutely not. So that's where we're at right now. And we think, okay, TikTok is going to appeal and this is going to go to the courts and we're going to find out what is going on. Well, they appealed. They, filed suit in a federal court claiming that TikTok ban was unconstitutional and that it violated the Commerce Clause, the free enterprise clause. That's the clause in America that says that we are banned from monopolizing, major companies so that they can basically control the price on everything. The decision from the Court of Appeals came down on December 6th that said, no, we're going to uphold the ban. They said that it doesn't violate the Commerce Clause. And they said that it's not against the freedom of speech. Their reasoning was basically because you are a Chinese entity and you don't have constitutional rights. And ByteDance was who was suing, not individuals, American citizens, but ByteDance was suing. And they're like, you don't have any constitutional rights. And therefore, we're upholding this ban. So then again, this happens and we're like, okay, well, they'll appeal up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And, we'll maybe get a stay on the January 19th. Well, TikTok then filed an emergency injunction with the Supreme Court on December 9th, asking them to stay the January 19th deadline until they can hear their appeal to them. And we all thought, well, that could possibly happen. Just recently, the Supreme Court denied that injunction, saying, no, we're not going to stay it. It doesn't mean that we won't hear arguments on the appeal, but we're not going to stay this ban while you go in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, because that could be years. The interesting thing about going to the U.S. Supreme Court, too, is that you're not guaranteed just because you appeal there that they're going to take your case. Only about 1% of cases that get appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court get what's called cert. And therefore, the courts hear their argument. So there's a chance they might just outright say, no, we're not going to hear this argument. And the lower court's decision and the appellate court stands, which is the TikTok ban will go into place. Or they can say, we'll hear your argument. And then they'll allow them to brief it. The TikTok ban's going to go in play because they're not going to probably hear argument and a decision before January 19th. And then they're going to review it and then they're going to make a decision on it. And interesting enough, we have a 6 very conservative leaning panel up there out of the 9 justices. And because of that, there's a lot of chatter to think that they're not going to overturn the ban, that they're going to uphold it. And so that's where we're at right now. The ban's going forward. TikTok, as of January 19th, either has to be in like contracts to sell, which they've already said they're not going to do. And so what does that mean for us who use TikTok? Well, January 19th, it doesn't mean that it gets like deleted off of your phone. They can't do that. But they did send a letter to the Apple Store and Google Store that they have to take it away, that you're not able to download it, which means that you're not going to get updates. And you probably have automatic updates on your phone, so you probably don't see how many times TikTok updates a month. It is quite a lot. Same with Facebook. It updates all the time. And that's because it's a very complicated formula and they're continuously making changes and making fixes. And so when you're not able to update, eventually the app's going to break and it's not going to work. It's not going to be what it is. And eventually we're not going to be able to use it. I think TikTok even knows that the ban's coming because they're now letting content creators download their videos, without a watermark, which they've never done before. So if you've done videos in TikTok, you now can download your videos to your phone or whatnot. So you can then put them on different platforms. And obviously Instagram's not a great platform. They're 96-second videos, and TikTok, your videos were probably longer. And then there's YouTube, but YouTube, again, has rules for its shorts and then rules for its long content. So it's a very interesting thing. And there is a lot of bipartisan. A lot of people agree with it, and a lot of people are very, very upset about it. I'm not a ginormous content creator, so in my mind, it's fine. Like Instagram is where I am majority, and I'm really working on my YouTube content with these little chats that I'm loving and I'm doing. So it's going to be interesting. And of course, as always, thanks for coming to our little chat, and put your comments in the comment section and you might get a short video or a response video to your questions. Have a good day.